Hey, welcome back to Persephone's Kitchen. Today we're going to do a chili. And chili is something that I make and I store in the freezer in aliquots in small quantities. It stays for months and actually it tastes better the longer it's in the freezer. So I make quite a bit of chili. Let me tell you what the ingredients are as you get your paper and pencil together. Here we go. So salt, of course, but I never put the salt in until the end of the cooking after I taste it and I know what my salt needs are, okay? I have soaked overnight beans, both black and red beans. I soaked about a cup and now they're about 2 cups because they have absorbed a lot of that water. I have 1.5 red onions and 10 cloves of garlic chopped. Here I have sweet red bell pepper chopped, 2 jalapeno peppers chopped, and a stick of celery chopped. Now jalapeno peppers, if you want a really hot chili, of course keep the pepper seeds. If not, discard them. I've kept the seeds from one pepper and discarded the seeds from the other. I have 1 can of tomato sauce and I have 1 can of tomato puree. We're gonna also need some brown sugar. So here's our brown sugar. I have 1 15-ounce can of salsa. You can make your own salsa or you can buy it. Love this ingredient. I'm going to use some Hershey's cocoa, of course unsweetened. Some tomato paste. I have some cumin. Now my cumin I buy whole. I roast it in a pan on low heat and then I grind it and it has this amazing smell. I have basil and oregano that I grow in the garden in the summer and then I dry it and I grind it and I'll use some of that. I have some thyme here. This happens to be fresh thyme. I'm going to use some sweet corn. I just buy a bag of frozen sweet corn. Now the sweet corn I do not add till the last 15 minutes of cooking because otherwise it'll turn to mush and I really like it to retain some of its integrity. So I'm going to add this at the end. Now you can use different types of meat. Or you can do meatless. So today I actually have about 3 pounds of ground venison. And I had some bison that I chopped into small pieces. See, really tiny pieces. And so you can use either pieces of meat, or you can use ground meat, or you can use a mix of both, and I'm going to use a mix of both. Now, what about chili peppers? I actually have a paste of Mexican chili peppers and you can see they're in oil. So let me show you the peppers. There are 2 kinds. I actually get it when I go to Mexico, or you can buy it here through Amazon. These are the 2 types of Mexican peppers I use. To be honest with you, you can use any 2 types you like. This is sweeter, this is hotter. They're dried. So what I do is I boil them in a very little bit of water and I keep boiling them till they absorb the water and get soft. Then I grind them in a food processor in oil. And you can keep that in the fridge for a few weeks or you can freeze it in small amounts in the freezer. Okay. So while you again take a look at these ingredients, I am going to go and turn on the stove. Okay, I'm going to add the onions and garlic. Now this is going to take a good 5-10 minutes to brown, so I'm just going to let it do its thing and we'll come back in about 10 minutes. All right, so you can see that the garlic and the onions are beginning to brown. So I'm now going to put in the celery, the red bell pepper, and the jalapeno pepper. And I'm going to let that cook for a little bit. All right, so what we're going to add next is all of the meat. And I'm going to add the pieces of meat first. Kind of let them brown a bit. Now I had a piece of bone in the bison, so I'm going to add the bone as well. After I finish cooking, I can take the bone out, but that's going to add flavor to this chili. Now I'm going to push all of this to the side, and I'm going to add the ground meat on this side. And when I add ground meat, what I do is I like to break it up. I literally use a potato masher to break it up. Saute that for just a bit. Add the rest of the stuff back in here. Mix that together. And now I'm going to add a bunch of stuff. Here's my tomato paste. I'm going to add a big dollop of my Mexican chilies. Two huge teaspoons of cocoa powder, heaping teaspoons. One heaping teaspoon of cumin. And after I finish cooking towards the end, I will add another small teaspoon of cumin at the very end. Sprinkle of the basil and oregano. Heaping teaspoon. Another heaping teaspoon of brown sugar. going to keep mixing that. All right, so while I'm mixing this, let me remind you that I used canola oil to cook with. But you know, you can use anything, any vegetable oil that you like. Doesn't have to be canola. And as always, when you work with meat, after you work with meat, make sure you wash your hands thoroughly with soap and water. Okay, you see how nice and brown this mix is. Smells totally yummy. Now, I'm going to add the salsa. And now the beans. My pot is getting really full. Add the tomato sauce. Crushed tomatoes. Now you see my chili is not too watery. It's rather thick. I am going to add a little bit of water, and I'm going to keep an eye on it as I cook it for about 2 to 3 hours. If I need to add more water, I will. If your chili becomes a little too watery, the trick is to add a little masa, maybe a tablespoon or 2 at a time. Masa is cornmeal, and that's going to thicken your chili so it's not too watery. So let me add some water. Well, that wasn't good. All right, take that out. There we go. I'm gonna rinse this can out too. A little water. And I'm not worried about the pot being too full because, to be honest, I'm going to simmer it on a very low flame for a long time. So I'm not going to boil it vigorously or anything. Just let it simmer for a low flame for a long time. You can even, at this point, put it in the oven at 350 and let it cook slowly. 325 even, and just let it cook over a few hours. Okay, so now I'm going to let my chili cook. Remember, when it's all done, I'm going to add the corn, the whole corn kernels. I like a lot of corn, so I add about 2 cups of corn. And I'm going to add an additional teaspoon, exactly 1 teaspoon of cumin powder. You don't want to forget your sprigs of thyme, which I'm going to just put on top and let them cook with the rest of the mixture. It'll literally melt away, so no worries. You can garnish it when you serve it with chopped coriander, avocados, sour cream, or shredded cheese. And of course, blue tortilla chips. So bon appetit.